And I appreciate you, Kaylin, for putting all this together and the agenda together. So with that, I'll just turn it over to you. Keep it simple.
That sounds great. I like simple is best. I'm going to go ahead. Kaylin, Director of the Resilience, y'all know me, but for any new people online joining us or listening on YouTube, I'm going to go ahead and start the update from what we've been working on in resilience here. Let me get that started. I'll share my screen. Yep, sorry, let me just let Rick in. Sorry, I'm trying to do a double duty here. Rick, if you just accept, you will be promoted to panelist. Okay. Does everybody see my screen here? Yes. Okay, great. So going to walk you through really quickly, just take a few minutes of time, and then we can answer some questions towards the end when we have our discussion period, but wanted to highlight some of the initiatives that we have going on at the Resilience Office here, including our Army Corps partnership, our kickoff we just started with our Rosemont and Bridgeview Resilience Plan, some recent grant opportunities that we just went after, as well as our new communication strategy that we're working through here with the Waterwise Charleston. So quickly, just to kind of give over our key buckets of our partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. And remember, Army Corps is really our federal partner in a lot of these large infrastructure projects that we're working with in the city for tackling flooding issues. And, you know, the biggest buckets that we've been working for with the Army Corps of Engineers over the years is through this battery extension project on the Charleston Peninsula. We've also kicked off this tidal and inland flood risk management study for the rest of the city. And then we've also utilized a unique account that I don't think we talk enough about, but it's actually one of the more exciting accounts that we have access to is for just direct project funding for our stormwater infrastructure projects. And really in our partnership with the Corps over the past, really, it's been 6 or 7 years now since we've gotten funding with the Corps and authorization. We've really been pushing our Charleston district and our Corps partners to innovate with us and accelerate as much as they can through their processes to really make their projects and our partnership fit Charleston. I'm just going to focus a little bit here and run down some updates on our battery extension project. The city is, you know, if you recall, and you've been following the process with the battery extension for the past 6 or 7 years, we went through a feasibility, had a signed chief's report in 2022. You know, that was really just the Corps saying it is feasible to do a project to protect the Charleston Peninsula from storm surge risk, and there's a really high economic value to that, which is really great. But, you know, the city of Charleston, we have pretty high standards for what we build in our city and how it fits our community. So over the past several years, we've been working through a design agreement with them. And then recently, over the past 6 months, the city underwent, and we're operating under an MOU with the Corps to really let us locally lead on the design and the alignment of this infrastructure. And really, again, the design goal that we're working through right now is extending the battery, right? Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We already have a protective piece of infrastructure in place here in Charleston that protects us from high tides, from storm surge, but it also is a really valued public amenity and public promenade and helps with connectivity in the south end of the peninsula. So really the idea we're working through now with the Corps is extending that up the west side and east side of the peninsula. And we're also working through with our local lead on this project right now with the Corps. We're working through integrating our stormwater and tidal management as well with this structure. You know, there's no sense in having a structure along the edge of the peninsula that's not also going to be able to help us in tidal events, which we see on a much more routine basis than our storm surge events that we potentially get. And again, we're refining that alignment. If you go back and you look at that chief's report from 2022, you'll see that particularly on the west side, which is our first phase of focus now, it's very incredibly wonky and chaotic. It crosses Lockwood Drive several times. It crosses Calhoun Street. There's vehicular gates. It's quite disruptive, and it really doesn't enhance the public realm, but quite the opposite. So the refinement that our team is working on now, and I will say the team that's working on this with the city is the water plan team that was led by Black and Beach. We're really refining it either off land or closer to land water edge, where it's really less gates and less public disruption and much more enhancing of the public realm. Again, as I said, through this process, we're really looking for pushing the Corps to expedite. And one of the first things we've already found success in is, if you have studied this project, it's broken down into 4 phases. The first being the west side. The second was being the rehabilitation of our existing batteries, and the third phase being the east side, and then fourth phase being Wagner Terrace. We've already swapped that. The next phase we'll be looking at after we complete the west side here shortly will be the east side, because a lot of moving pieces and projects are happening on the peninsula, and we need to make sure that these are all integrated to enhance our connected spaces and connectivity on the peninsula as well. And I'm happy to answer a little more questions about that project, or I know the mayor's excited to talk about it as well, but I want to move forward to how this project is also integrating with our tidal and flood risk management study. That is what's exciting about this, is it's looking at the entirety of the city. Yep, sure.
Point on the battery extension, with regards to the proposed alignment, the original alignment and the original design versus the proposed design. For our next meeting, we should be in a pretty good place to show you all that alignment, the proposed alignment, the schedule for the first phase, and then also the tentative alignment for the eastern side. Because as Kaylin pointed out, it's very different than what was originally contemplated and released to the public from the Corps. And the good news is, based on Black and Beech's initial cost analysis, that our project is I think under a 5% delta between what the Army Corps proposed. So a lot of positive momentum happening there, and we're actually, as she highlighted, going to be heading up to Washington. I'm meeting with the governor about it on next week, right, Logan? Or Kaylin, right? He'll be on the battery, and then we're going up to Washington to meet with the federal delegation and senior leadership of the Corps to figure out how to really expedite this. Because bottom line is, we can't afford for it to be, on any of these things, to be a 20-year Corps process. We need to push them to move a lot faster. In the current climate in Washington, I think would be, if there's any silver lining right now, there'd be reception for that.
Thanks, Mayor. I would also highlight too, to the mayor's point, that we can do this successfully. The lovely picture that you do see is Matt's stormwater team in the project of the rehabilitation of the low battery. So we've done that successfully, so we have a proof of concept that we can do this. Just moving quickly again, this tidal and inland flood risk management study, and since we were talking battery extension, a key component of this study is the initial proposal from the Corps with the coastal storm risk management was that it was just addressing storm surge, but not also the much more routine flooding challenges that we see on the peninsula, from stormwater and rainfall inundation to, again, those increasing tidal events that we're seeing from king tides at a more increasing rate. So this will help us integrate those and looking at those problems into this project as well, which could be, utilizing some upsizing of pumps that are part of the project, the operation and maintenance of the gates to be using towards tidal times. But also it's looking at, and specifically now it's looking at James Island and West Ashley as well. It does have authorization to look at the entire city, which we will, but right now, given guidance from the water plan, those kind of most challenging flooding risks that we're dealing with near term are in James Island and West Ashley. And out there, they're going to be looking at some more large scale nature-based solutions, including marsh restoration, living shorelines, larger scale improved drainage conveyance, and as well as potentially some non-structural interventions. And that could be voluntary home elevations as well. And what's really exciting is next steps. There's some public input, which the Corps has been joining us at our Waterwise series here this week. We've had in West Ashley and James Island, getting some public feedback on that process. But what's really exciting is the Corps has asked us, the city, to lead the design of the nature-based features as well. So more to come on that, but just wanted to give a brief update. And then actually what's, again, kind of a really exciting pot of money in partnership with the Corps that we've been tapping into is this separate authorization for what they call environmental infrastructure. And it's really direct spending for stormwater projects. And we've worked with our congressional delegation who have been such great partners with us, the city of Charleston, especially championed by Senator Lindsey Graham, and getting us a 25 million authorization for our stormwater projects. And we most recently, back in January, through a disaster supplemental bill, got $7.625 million for two specific projects. That's the rehabilitation of the brick arches, which the city has already done underway. And I know Matt, once he comes on board, he's happy to talk more about that as well. But also out in West Ashley now, moving forward with further design of the conveyance plans out there in the DuPont-Wapu Basin. And again, what's really exciting about this pot of money is that, it doesn't go through that traditional 3x3 process that we have done through the Peninsula project and now the Tidal and Inland. So we don't really need to spend years studying anything. We can just get direct funding for projects that we have already invested in or will continue to. So that's really exciting. Moving a little bit on from the Army Corps, but this is related because in our first phase of our battery extension and project with the Army Corps in the Peninsula, it does include some non-structural measures for the Rosemont and Bridgeview communities. And based off of initial feedback several years ago and engagement during the feasibility phase, we heard loud and clear from the communities that, some of the proposals the Corps were providing just didn't fit their community, and they really needed the city to invest in looking at more nature-based features and some of our more immediate stormwater concerns up there. So that's exactly what we're doing. We kicked it off in March. The city contributed funding as well as some other community partners, because really this is going to be the community's plan. It's not the city's plan for the community. It's the community's plan to steward for themselves. And so Low Country Alliance for Model Communities, the Sustainability Institute, and the CCRAB, Citizens Research Group up there, have been awesome partners, and we're all kicking this off and hopefully going to be having a summer community meeting up there in Rosemont and Bridgeview with the community. So please stay tuned for more on that. And we're really actually hoping that this could be a pilot that we could then replicate in other areas across the city and other communities to help them build their own resilient plans. And then also really briefly, I wanted to talk about some exciting grant opportunities. Yes, there are still grant opportunities out there, and we have awesome grants manager, and she looks at them and finds them for us. And so one of them is the NOAA's habitat restoration grant that we found that New Market Creek restoration would be an awesome fit for. We utilize the water plan as the guide, and it also really perfectly aligns with the kickoff the city is doing with the low line, because improvements and flooding improvements that we're doing with the New Market Creek run right adjacent to the low line. So that's going to help keep that new public amenity resilient for years to come. So we're really hopeful that we'll get this $6 million award that we applied for. We've also applied for the hazard mitigation grant program. It's a program under FEMA that it's, when disasters occur, they send money down through the state. This is money that was sent to the State Emergency Management Office from Helene Recovery. And so we applied $500,000, and our police department also applied too for some cameras. But really it's all under some umbrella of enhancing and increasing the city's capacity for communications and data collection during flooding events. And, that means like building up our flood sensor and monitoring program, because that's really important not only during events. It helps our public responders know where to go. It also helps then collect data for where we know where we want to apply for projects and things like that. It helps make our narrative a lot better. So really excited about building out that program and hopeful that this funding can help contribute to that. I will say the city already has a foundation of this work ongoing, so this would only enhance that effort. And then I'll just end with, Waterwise Charleston is a big push that we've been doing. We just kicked it off this May. We're really excited. It's an engagement opportunity for folks in the community to come out and really understand what the city's been working on. We've had our plans, we've had our studies over the years, but we've really moved into implementation and action phase. And it's given the ability, and through our basin flood action, we have these basin maps that are blown up. You can kind of see it a little off to the side. We have this interactive floor map where we're asking residents to find their basin, because that's really how we want residents to start thinking about when they think what's happening, it's not necessarily just in their neighborhood or on their street, it's what's happening in my basin, because we know that the water has the larger, broader impact. So we're kind of, you know, if you've been, you went, we kicked it off Tuesday in West Ashley and last night in James Island. We have 3 more, Peninsula on the 19th, and then Daniel Island and Johns Island on the 28th and 29th. But it's a pretty cool interactive experience. Residents can find their basin, then pivot and turn and find their more detailed basin action map, where they can see our ongoing stormwater projects and some conceptual plan pilot projects from the water plan, and then turn around and ask staff directly questions. But we've also have partners in the room that we work with as well, because we're all pieces of this puzzle. You can see the Army Corps was over there taking some feedback, but we also, you can see there, we had the aquarium, we have South Carolina Sea Grant, who we partner on. And in the back end, you can't see there, but we had Charleston County there. We had the State Resilience Office. And I'd say, you know, some of the greatest feedback I heard from residents this week was, well, it's just such a great visual to see everybody in the room together, because that's really what kind of is needed to move forward with this work. So this is, you know, this is what we're doing in May, but WaterWise is really meant to be, when you see the city communicating about water engagement and strategies, it's going to be under this WaterWise Charleston, because, you know, we know there's so many things happening. It's really hard to be like specifically thinking like, oh, well, this is this X department, and why. It's all kind of happening under this umbrella as one city partnership. So excited to continue to highlight that engagement, and I will put the link in the chat box so folks online can see it as well, but I know that I've sent it to our members. That's it for my update as well. And so I know we're moving on time, but I did, because I was a part of this. So this is a good segue over to Logan, our city's chief policy officer, to talk about one of our other initiatives that I think is really new and exciting, and I was happy to be a part of. So Logan, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about our project with the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin. And I think that one thing on the WaterWise workshops that we have 3 remaining, and Caitlin can share the links to those and the information on that. But part of the mayor's initial idea behind the Basin Flood Action Committee was, one, so that y'all could have updates and provide feedback on what we're working on and what the city's doing, but also so that y'all can help us advocate and help us generate turnout to residents and show what we're doing. So 3 workshops remaining, and we'd love y'all's help getting the word out and driving attendance to those. That being said, Kaylin was part of the team, along with a few other people from the city, that we actually went up to Boston, but weekly we've been participating in classes with a team from Harvard on projects and difficult challenges to solve that are happening across the world. Honestly, I think the map of the cities that are participating is on screen there. Met some awesome people through that. But the project that we were talking about solving is flooding and what that means to residents. And where we ended up was trying to make flooding impacts brief and manageable. So the idea is us focusing on how, when it does flood, when there is water, when there is rain, the water goes away quickly. It's not in your house. It does not really damage what you can do. Part of this project was us trying to find entry points and an entrance into solving this problem for people. What can we do? Where's a manageable place to start? Well, we have this Basin Flood Action Program that broke the city down by basin, and then we highlighted all the stormwater projects that we're doing there, and then all the water plan conceptual projects that were proposed there through the water plan. But the missing piece in all of this was the conversation around maintenance. And Matt, who's on here, his team does an awesome job with maintenance, but the challenges that they face are that maintenance isn't really a standard term. It sounds standard, right? But cleaning a ditch can mean, you know, just clearing leaves in some place, leaves and debris. In other places, it can mean a downed tree that's blocking it. So getting out in front of residents and communicating what that looks like is challenging. People are always like, hey, when are you getting to my house? When are you doing my basin? When are you doing, or when are you cleaning the ditch in front of my street? That kind of thing. And so what we wanted to do is find an area of the city as a pilot project to address some of the complex jurisdictional issues, as well as some of the maintenance funding issues and the staff capacity requirements. And we thought, man, there is no place as complex as the James Island Creek Basin, where we have the town of James Island, the James Island Public Service District, unincorporated Charleston County, the city of Charleston, all kind of coming together to create this mesh of jurisdiction, and not to forget the state and the South Carolina Department of Transportation. So in this basin, our goal over the next 6 months up to September 1st is to clean and maintain every piece of stormwater infrastructure in this basin. And then in doing so, we will also communicate and talk with every resident in the basin, and tell them what's going on here. So we are going to leave information on everyone's door and mail every person in this district, and then engage credible messengers to help them show what's going on, how we can help, information on who you can call if you have an issue, and make this all readily accessible to residents so they know if I'm having a problem, if there's something happening that we haven't seen, how they can inform us of this, and also to let them know here's what we're working on, here's what's coming, and we're going to get to you. The idea is that if we can solve the jurisdictional issues in the James Island Creek Basin, we can solve the issues in any basin across the city. And we look forward to putting that into action. And I think that's a pretty good segue into Matt Fountain. The first step of this project was actually mapping all of the assets in this basin. And I think Matt has a map. Kaylin, I'm not sure if you have that ready to pull up or not. But awesome. So Matt, I can turn it over to you to talk about the map, and we can then lead that into your stormwater update.
We can certainly do that. So as Logan mentioned, we have kind of put together some mapping of the existing data that both the city, county, and town maintain for this basin. That asset inventory includes much of what's on DOT streets, town streets, city streets, but is not comprehensive. We did include data from some collaborative work that those entities have done on drainage throughout James Island as well. And I'm going to show you kind of this quick overview map just to get a sense of what we're talking about, that the different major color coding or jurisdictional areas. So the bluish gray being the city of Charleston, the greenish colorations being the town of James Island, and then the reddish colorations, pinkish colorations being unincorporated Charleston County. When you zoom in, the different road colorations also align to the different jurisdictions, whether those are local jurisdiction roads or SCDOT jurisdiction roads laid in on top of that. And then the much more complex color coding coming off of that are the existing infrastructure pieces of, are there open ditches? Are there pipes? Are there rear yard ditches, canals? And then where is that infrastructure going, and how recently have we maintained it or done full rehabilitation on it? What we're doing right now is called a data gap analysis, where we're seeing, okay, here's all the information we have, what information don't we have, so we can prioritize collection of information we don't have. And then, as Logan had mentioned, come back and lay out a cleaner sort of single location maintenance plan for the entirety of the city infrastructure within the basin, and then have that discussion with the town, the county, and DOT of how are we going to approach the same maintenance plan for all of their entities, as the water frequently will flow through different jurisdictions to get to the marsh. So that's kind of the brief overview from the infrastructure side. I think as Logan mentioned and Kaylin mentioned as well, there's going to be a citizen engagement and outreach component to it as well, where we're going to spend a lot of effort both reaching out directly to residents throughout the basin and property owners throughout the basin, but also reaching out to neighborhood leaders, other major stakeholders in the basin, and helping them spread the same message so that we're getting better connectivity to the residents, letting them know what we're doing, what we're seeing, how the drainage works in the basin, what our challenges are, and what our path is moving forward. And then finally, they'll be layering over the top of this a lot of the data that's presented in the water plan for what are our small scale improvement projects for drainage, our capital improvement projects for drainage, future potential projects for drainage, and then an assessment of are there any areas that we haven't addressed based on all that discussion with the residents. So a lot of work going on, but the intent is to make this a strategy kind of run through, see how things work, and figure out the strategy for expanding this out to the rest of the city over the coming years.
Matt, I've got a question for you.
Absolutely.
Do you have the county and the town on board on this in terms of it's being done cohesively, or are you just going to look at the? Are you just going to improve the ditches in the city, and it's then maybe the county does or does not improve them elsewise? What's the big picture there?
Matt,
so
can I?
Please, Logan, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I was gonna start off with that one because I actually talked to Mayor Lyon about this from the town of James Island last night as well, and we've had conversations with SCDOT, and Matt, I know you talked to the county too, but John, to your question, we're trying to do everything here because as Kaylin will be quick to come off mute and tell us if I say otherwise, water does not know jurisdictional boundaries, and so where one ditch becomes a SCDOT ditch, it may pick up and become a city ditch as well. What we're doing now is working with our counterparts to figure out what resources they can contribute. Where we may have equipment to clean a ditch, they may not have it, but SCDOT, for example, has traffic calming equipment that we don't have. So if y'all provide the traffic support for us to do the work, we can help do the work. And where you may lack money, we may have money. Where you may have money, we may have resources. Right now, we're just trying to get that kind of negotiation settled. But we talked with the mayor of the town of James Island last night. Matt's been talking with the county, and we've talked with SCDOT about that part. So the goal is to do every asset, but just wanted to jump in with that overview, and I'll let Matt be much smarter and more in detail about it than I.
Okay. By the way, I just wanted to applaud you for taking the lead on this, because obviously the issue has been across the board on various topics, been interjurisdictional issues. So thanks for doing that.
And Logan, I'm really not a lot to add other than exactly following on what you said, that the intent is to get certainly the county system or the city system cleaned, maintained on the schedule, and have those discussions with the county, with DOT and the town on how do we bring them into that same approach in the basin. And there's going to be a lot of learning in that process from everyone on how do we make it work. I mean, that's the intent of this, of let's kind of stop stepping back and saying we just clean our stuff and then you got to call your other government in order to get your stuff clean. Let's start trying to bring everybody together and do it in one place. That'll be a process for sure, but it'll be a good one.
Thanks, Matt. I think we can segue into your update too, since you're up. I will say too, if it wasn't clear, Matt was part of our team in Harvard.
Understand this view. I think this view is a lot easier for me to navigate. All right. This is going to be just a brief. Last meeting we did a very long, thorough overview of a lot of what the stormwater department is working on. This is just a brief overview of what is accomplished between the last meeting and this meeting on our major projects and some of our small projects. Please do ask questions if we go through and or any uncertainties on it. The US 17 Spring Fishburne Drainage Improvement Project, the deep tunnel system along the Sutton Clark Parkway corridor, continuing the building construction, and the main accomplishment has been the primary pump installation has begun. You get a little bit of a sense of scale. This is part of the pump system with the gentleman standing in the front. These are $6 million of pumps going in to make sure the system works during extreme tides and significant events as well. These are diesel engine driven pumps, so they'll work even in major power outages or major hurricanes due to that critical corridor, Sutton Clark Park. So battery restoration, this project actually just won a award from Historic Charleston Foundation, so we're really excited to have that happen in recognition of the preservation elements of the project, as well as some of the previous recognition we've gotten for the linear civil elements of the project. The intersections have now been reopened on the project for traffic. Linear works continuing. We expect to have another couple of months as we finalize basically the road surfaces and get that project completely reopened and finish this final phase of the project. Concord Street Pump Station upfit. This is the pump station that drains parts of Calhoun, Meeting Street, Market Street. The upfit's been going on. We did some work prior to last hurricane season. We've been working this year. We'll have substantial completion with a fully operational upfit pump station by end of June to layer us into hurricane season for this year. Then we'll actually have a little bit of sort of touch-up work on the station in early 2026 following hurricane season for final completion, but this one's coming in on time and on budget and in time for hurricane season, which is always great. King and UG Pump Station. This is a picture of some of the excavation going on at the site. The concrete wet well is going in for those pump bays on the project. The outfall is primarily complete. This project still has quite a runtime. We're looking at another year of construction, but significant progress occurring on that large scale project. Brick Arch Drainage System, Kaylin touched on this in her presentation. We're bringing to council this month the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer agreement to provide a little over $5 million of funding towards this project, probably focusing on 2 corridors, one of which is the Brick Arch system on Cumming Street running from Calhoun to Spring, and then one of which will be the Brick Arch on Calhoun Street running from the harbor back to Meeting Street. So two major areas of heavy flooding in the city. We think we'll get some short-term improvement. Construction on that project will likely start in early 2026 and should be completed within about a year. So this will be, again, quick start work with quick completions on it for those improvements. One of the reasons we like the arch work so much is you get such rapid improvement for your funding. The MUSC pump station, draining out most of Courtney Drive and Medical District. We have a item going to council this month to finalize taking the project from 90% design to 100% design, clean up a few items. The Corps will then go through, finalize that work as we permit and look for construction in 2026 on this. That's substantial improvement on that as well. The Cooper Jackson, this is the Upper East Side of the peninsula. We're working through a potential $5 million grant agreement with South Carolina Office of Resilience. They've shown some real interest in funding this project with some great support from the governor's office. There's a lot of work that the mayor and city have put in an advocacy of how do we improve drainage in this region of the city due to a lot of the housing that's placed in the city, placed in this section of the city. $5 million from SCORE is the plan, with an additional $5 million or so of city funds beyond what we've already put into design and permitting. Looking for design and permitting to complete sometime in 2026, and then construction to follow on after that. Forest Acres, the phase 2 of the project's now completed. This is the improvements that kind of extend the phase 1, which was the West Ashley Bikeway drainage improvements. This takes that and turns it north up through Playground Road up to the St. Andrews Parks and Playgrounds facility, and then into Highway 61 and back into some of the housing developments that extend to the west. You can see some various pictures here of the open canal improvements, box culvert installations, improvements of sections under the roads, new sidewalk that was put in as part of the project. Very successful project. Already shown some great improvements to flooding from some of the heavy rains that came through at the end of last year when the majority of the infrastructure was in place. Church Creek, this is one of our first major green infrastructure projects on Bridgepoint, where we demolished a series of flood-prone townhomes that were acquired with support from a FEMA grant. And the city came back with a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and basically turned the vacant parcel into a series of wetlands and green infrastructure, added walking trails. The Parks Department's going to install a small playground out here, as well as some support features for that, including likely a drinking water fountain and potentially a bathroom to make this more accessible for the community as well. That project, again, complete and now restoring the vegetation. Sorry, there were 2 other small projects associated with that one on Mowler and Wolt Drive, which are a neighborhood just off of Beast Ferry Road on the north side. Those are also smaller green infrastructure projects on individual buyout properties, about 5 total properties. That's been completed as well. part of that. Lake Dotterer improvements. This is along Glen McConnell Parkway, trying to resolve the flooding on Lake Dotterer. We had brought a consultant in with some funding that the county is providing through some of their original tranche of ARPA funding. We've completed our review of improvement options, a lot of stormwater modeling and survey work in the area, selected the recommended improvements, and have our contract for the design and permitting work on those improvements going to council this month, and completion of the design and permitting are expected in late 2026. Howell Avenue, James Island flood storage. This is another green infrastructure project with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. We've cleared this site at this point, other than some of the wetlands that are remaining on the site, and have started excavation. And the county is actually supporting us on this one. Charleston County doing excavation work for the city. We're funding the disposal of the excavated material, and then coming back and doing installation of walking paths, pedestrian interconnectivity with some of the roadways in the area, and natural wetland vegetation on the site as well. Barbary Woods Drainage Improvement Project on Johns Island. The clearing has been completed on this project within the prescribed windows for minimizing ecological impacts to the bat species in the area. Now we're moving on to excavation work, and still on target to complete this project with full replantings this calendar year. Small project allocation. These are the smaller projects we work on rather than the capital projects. In James Island, over in the Willow Walk Shoreham neighborhood, phase 2 of our rear yard ditch reconstruction is incomplete. You can see that is in progress. You can see in the left picture, we've completed tree removal and started our initial grading work to restore the swales, and we're coming back to build the swales with some fine grading and then revegetation of the system. That'll help store a lot of water in a neighborhood that's challenged with flooding during higher tides. We did a phase 1 earlier in a different part of the neighborhood with the same approach, been very successful. Then on the right, in the West Ashley, the Sandhurst neighborhood, we've completed basically trenchless lining of the existing pipes that were failing in the neighborhood to make sure that drainage stays open in the primary outfall. This kind of sits behind to the north side of Sam Rittenberg, kind of in the area of Ms. Rose's and the cafeteria there. Lastly, outfall rehabilitation. So we got to get the water all the way into the rivers, not just into the marsh. Sandcroft, we have an outfall cleaning advertised for bid, which is what you see on this map here, just off of Ashley Hall Plantation Road, trying to, again, restore the drainage system's connection into the creek system. And then in East Oak, West Oak Forest, we have submitted for permitting with the Army Corps of Engineers in the state for our outfall improvement work, which is just south of 17 near the large Baptist church. And that is the update. Any questions on any of those projects? No, there's a lot.
Matt, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the Howell Avenue project, would that be considered what was in the WaterWise plan as a stormwater park?
So it is set up as a stormwater park. We'll call them either stormwater parks, ecological parks, where we basically excavate material out in sort of a flood prone area, reconnect the drainage into the site more efficiently. That excavation lets it store water, and then we put it back with native vegetation so that it'll support the ecology of the area as well. In this case, we're adding in pedestrian trails to interconnect it in addition to all that.
So as far as all the different planned improvements for James Island, that would be a pretty similar model of a stormwater park. Obviously, size and scale, is different per site, but that's a good reference point for what the future looks like.
That is what you'd be looking for those kind of stormwater ecological parks, green infrastructure approaches, similar to what we did on Bridgepoint in West Ashley, and a little bit smaller, quite a bit smaller than what we're doing in Barbary Woods on Johns Island, but similar styles of projects. Right. When we're actually removing a lot of construction debris from the site, so it's kind of another it was buried on the site long ago, so it's sort of a double win again of trying to remove something that's problematic and install something that's benefit.
Matt, this is John. On the Burberry Woods one on Johns Island, I know you've got a couple of maybe boardwalks or paths between the neighborhoods, but you also have, I guess, mulch paths along the edges of it. Have you looked at how all of those paths fit into the overall picture of bike ped paths across the entire city portion of the island and how it fits into that?
Yeah, so the primary perspective for Barbary for that interconnectivity is providing that that connection from sort of the neighborhood to the north of Barbary Woods, that like Emmett's Road area, and then connecting it down into the Barbary Woods neighborhood in the south. So there will be a full culvert style bridge system connecting for bike and ped access there. So that will provide connection from River Road to Maybank Highway that doesn't involve you having to go through that actual physical intersection. So you can kind of come back through the roads off of the main roads and make that same interconnection as the sidewalks continue to get installed as projects come in on Maybank. So the idea is to help people get from River down into the Maybank, like more commercial corridor on Maybank.
Okay, but the other paths are really maintenance paths that people can use them to walk if they want to.
Yeah, so the other paths are intended as maintenance paths. They are certainly on the site, and you can certainly walk on them, and we expect people to. They are designed for maintenance, but they are going to be open for being able to walk on them as well.
Thank you.
The primary route will be ADA compliant and fully built out for accessibility. The other ones are more a way to explore the site and the ecology of the site.
And John, that was a pretty good segue, I think, into our next agenda item. Galen, I don't know if
I was just gonna say, I want to make sure we get the mayor has some, I think, good information to share with folks. So Mayor, I'll turn it over to you, and then I think then we'll still have some time for a little bit of Q&A from the committee from everything that's been presented today. So Mayor?
Sure. Do we have an image of the map we can pull up?
Do you have one, Logan?
we do not have one that will not crash Zoom yet. So it's too large.
So guys, what we're doing, it's been a pretty broad undertaking. I mean, going back almost 8 months now, but looking at the city pretty holistically as it relates to our road systems, obviously, the basin flood maps that Matt and Kalen spoke of, complementing it with, public transportation, with proposed road projects, along with overlays for where workforce housing is located. Basically having a very all-inclusive, comprehensive charting of the entire city. And we're doing this not only to gather information, but for planning purposes, for both near-term and long-term infrastructure needs. And so it's been a big lift, but as of last week, we've got at least the initial draft maps of these outlined. And what's cool about it is it's all booked into our GIS system so that you can turn layers on and off and see how different things relate to one another. And a huge initiative or servicing behind this is in 2026, there will be on the ballot in Charleston County another request for extending the existing half-cent sales tax. And that is, as you all are probably well aware, what funds our roads regionally, at least in Charleston County. But it also funds green space initiatives. It also funds public transportation. It has a whole host of different things that are pretty essential to our future. And so what you're seeing here is in a little bit more simplified format, what we're trying to educate the public in advance of this sales tax referendum, where we highlight to people that if you take Bees Ferry Road, right now, if you were to just run it out for 25 years and the growth projections, this is what happens. It fails, right? I mean, it turns red, as does Glen McConnell. Level of service F. And this is based on, algorithms. This is math, right? And so how do you make improvements for the future that will ultimately be able to handle the growth, but do it in a way that maintains our quality of life, right? So if you do no road improvements, that's really not much of an option. But how do we be strategic and thoughtful about where roads do go and how they're complemented by other initiatives, land use initiatives? So you go down to the next one. One thing you can do is, you obviously do different road improvements and perhaps some widening or added lanes. But that's still not going to get you there. That's still going to probably, and this is we've done a few different iterations of this, but even with the proposed road improvements on Bees Ferry and Glen McConnell that are contemplated through the sales tax referendum, you're still not going to get there with the growth that we have. But if you keep going, what we can do is look at greenbelt funds to potentially buy down existing entitled property that might not make sense if they're lower areas or the cost of infrastructure is going to be pretty negative for the city to service it. It might make a lot more sense to buy down the density. Just to use a simple example, if it costs $20 million to buy down the density on 600-acre approved subdivision, but you would have to build a $60 million road to access it, well, maybe it makes sense to buy the density down, right? So we need to look really strategically at our land use plans. And then the other thing we need to do is look at where our services are, because another example, this is a great one. Right now, Charleston County has an option to buy 25 acres in the Long Savannah subdivision. Well, they understandably have said, we've looked at our growth projections and we don't need to go there because we have the old C.E. Williams, which is on 17, and we own that real estate. And we can just, when capacity is reached, we can build a new facility on our C.E. Williams site. Well, the problem with that is most of the growth is happening in Long Savannah. So you then would say, okay, everybody in Long Savannah is going to need to get on Bees Ferry and go to 17 to take their kids to school. So why don't you sell C.E. Williams and buy the 25 acres if that's where you put your school, and it becomes a neighborhood school and it keeps cars off the road. And that brings down the algorithm, if you will, for traffic patterns. And so ultimately, if you think about this, and then other initiatives like grocery stores and job centers and businesses that kind of keep people from having to do longer commutes is another initiative. So between all these different aspects and this mapping program that we have now for the city, I think we're going to be able to have voters have a very informed perspective of what's possible if we're smart about where we spend this money, provided they approve it. But we just have got to be extremely organized about going out for the ask. And so we're working not only here in the city, but we are meeting regularly now with Charleston County and with North Charleston and Mount Pleasant Planning Department so that we can have a comprehensive view and the voters can have a comprehensive view of what opportunities lie ahead of us. So I know it's a lot to take in, but I really have to give kudos to city staff for rolling up their sleeves. They've done some incredible work on, again, across all departments, but in particular, Matt and Stormwater and Kalen, I mean, kind of bringing in the water into this, because a lot of these funding projects for the water wise, I mean, that can come from the 0.5-cent sales tax if we're smart about it. So anyway, just wanted to give you all a brief window into what's going on. It's very much still a work in progress, but I look forward to keeping this group up to speed on how this progresses. And what I need from you all is input and advice on it so that we can tweak it. I mean, you have your ears to the ground. And then once we get to a plan to help us sell it, because I can't stress how important this is going to be to educate the broader public. But we owe it to them to be organized in the ask. So I'll open it up for any questions anybody might have and take it from there.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. One is that in order to do the buy down of the densities using greenbelt funds, you're going to have to considerably increase the amount of greenbelt funds that are in there. I mean, percentage wise, from 10% to who knows what. So is that part of your thought process?
Yeah. So the basic math on this, John, now that 526 is dead, is that for the remaining road projects that are deemed priority road projects, the roads themselves would equate to about half of what the 0.5-cent sales tax would generate. And so you're left with a much larger pot of money than what was previously contemplated. And I can't tell you what the specific breakdown would be or would be proposed, but that's what we're working with Charleston County on, with each municipality telling Charleston County, well, look, up 61, it makes sense for us to buy that density down than to expand 61. Johns Island's another case in point. So there's no question that it would require more percentage going to Greenbelt. And that's within the county's purview, should they choose to go that route. And I think they will.
Okay. The follow on then is that you've got, previously to your administration, the approach was, the Dutch dialogues to zone things or in the lower elevations, which, areas you don't want to build on, which would have meant down zoning. Most likely, which would have probably meant some lawsuits out of that. Is this kind of a way around that to, just preemptively say, okay, we're going to pay you for that land as opposed to just down zoning?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but we are also, as part of this process, rewriting our entire zoning ordinance. And it was reported in the paper that there's disappointment that I pushed pause on that rezoning rewrite or the zoning rewrite. But I think it's very prudent to get this data inputted and to understand where the priorities are for infrastructure, both resilience infrastructure, road infrastructure, public transportation infrastructure, so that we can have that really inform our zoning. Because we have a responsibility, and every municipality has a responsibility to have our land use planning reflect where it can and can't support infrastructure. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
You're on mute there. Thank you. Okay, any other questions?
I've got a follow-up for that as well. What opportunities are there for us to augment those funds with conservation bank money as well, if we were going to set aside some of those parcels as park space or passive flooding areas?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the exciting component of this to me. If you look at it holistically and you take some of the Greenbelt funds and then you can leverage in other funding sources on a variety of fronts, right? And I really think it can compound as long as you're doing it in a smart and thoughtful way, right? So not just when it comes to conservation funding, but even road funding and public transportation. I mean, when we're looking at these federal grants, they want to see that there's a real commitment locally. And if we can show them that we have shovel-ready projects, it goes a long way.
And to that point on transportation as well, what consideration is there for rapid transit or something expanding off of what's being done by the Low Country Rapid Transit in West Ashley?
Yeah, pretty focused on making sure that the LCRT is fully funded and operational, and a lot of the planning is dependent on that. And then what are the side routes that go off of that or feed off of that? I think you're going to need to have some flexibility built into that, because while we can direct growth and we can encourage growth in certain areas, we can't guarantee it. And so you need to have some flexibility for the alt routes, if you will, that come into the main line. But again, if you look at the region, some of it kind of defines itself. So, again, I'm optimistic that we might not get it perfect, but I think we'll get a pretty thoughtful master plan, if you will, that'll help inform how and where we should grow.
Thank you.
Again,
Yeah.
guys, this is a work in progress, a lot more on it to come, but we are digging in deep, and we're encouraging, we're showing the county, we're showing North Charleston, and we're leaning in to help them too. We want this to be a very collaborative effort. And again, so far it's been incredibly positive responses and going down a pretty good path. But again, we're going to need y'all's help on it. We're going to need your input. We're going to need you to dig in. We're going to need you to advise, and then we're going to need you to help us sell.
Thanks, Mayor. We have just a few more minutes. So, if anybody from the committee had any comments or feedback or questions from everyone.
This is Keith Waring. Mayor Cogswell, great job, by the way, for the whole team on this one. Are the other municipalities leaning in as hard on their specific projects, and for example, the town of Mount Pleasant or the town of North Charleston, as we are with the city of Charleston?
I mean, nobody's as good as we are, but
we're all in this together, right?
they certainly have been. But for example, like neither one of those cities have the kind of IS capabilities that we have. So, but they're absolutely thinking in similar ways, and very committed to being extremely organized and transparent about what their initiatives are and needs are, and to communicate that with the county and other municipalities so everything syncs. And ties together. So it's been great so far. It really has been, and they've been certainly leaning in and supportive.
And do they have as much information on their drainage basins as we do?
No. Again, they have a decent amount. I mean, they're not as James Island has some problem. I mean, they're pretty low, but Mount Pleasant isn't. I mean, they certainly have drainage issues, but it's not nearly the extent that we do. In North Charleston, same thing. I mean, it's a lot more isolated than what we have. So,
all right.
Fortunately,
Thank you.
Detailed in their mapping.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just add on the timeline piece, that we just got the first draft to the mayor's initial question of if I could pull one up here. The draft map with all of the information on is so large that it typically crashes the computer of whoever is operating it at the time. So because it has so much information on it, this is 6 months of the city compiling it. So now we're kind of refining it and beautifying that map so that we can share with council and then with members of the community over the summer, and then take it kind of public going into this fall. But the idea is for us to have this in a presentable fashion that people can see and share and interact with and turn on the layers, and even have it on its own page that you can go on and explore and tinker with it and see how these projects will work and how they'll make the changes that improve quality of life. So that's literally, we got the maps done, the first draft done this week. So
and just so y'all know, the reference point in the future, and I don't know if this will change, but we're calling the whole initiative's been dubbed CR26, which is very original, Charleston Region 26. So, but when you hear us refer to the vernacular now is CR26, this initiative, kind of across the different municipalities.
Just a quick one, if I could, for Matt. Matt, are there any thoughts of changing the storm water regs, or should they be changed to address legacy entitlements such as Cane Hoy and Long Savannah?
So the regulations, the way they're set up, there are expiration periods, but on many sites, there are expirations where if you haven't started construction, if you haven't built, if you haven't done significant investment, basically the regulations will still apply. They're generally not exempted out by development agreements or by other major items. The one exception to that is if you're in a master planned project where you've installed significant infrastructure as part of your overall stormwater master plan model. There isn't like a requirement to go back and redo the existing installed infrastructure that was put in for compliance purposes. So I'd say we have much less in the way of, and again, I am not an attorney, so I'm going to use language and try not to use the wrong language, but much less in the way of vesting for stormwater regulations than you would see in other areas of compliance gets looked at more like a public safety.
Okay, thank you.
But John, I'll tell you this too, just as a follow-up, every 5 years, we revisit our stormwater manual and look at ways to, make sure our manual remains very strict because we have to. But then if there are areas that, one size fits all doesn't work, particularly when it comes to some of these smaller projects or communities that get impacted by a blanket overlay per se, we're trying to be a little more surgical about that. Certainly not to encourage growth by any stretch in low areas, but where we do have areas that are proving problematic for folks that have been there, particularly settlement communities, that sort of thing, trying to be a lot more creative on that front as well.
Okay.
And I've got to jump, guys, to go to a neighborhood meeting, but appreciate everybody's time and looking forward to showing you all a lot more about what we've been working on here in the near future.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. And reminder, our next meeting will be meeting in July. And as I said before and in the email, and Logan emphasized, we really want your feedback to help build what we're speaking about here. And now you have an idea of everything we're working on and moving forward with. So please bring it to us, bring it to me, and we'll get working on that July agenda. And in the meantime, you know where to find all of us here at the city, and we'll see you. I know I'll see you before July, most folks on this call. So